Hey everybody, we've got another quick watch, kind of an overview. Still learning about it, so I'm not going to go too in depth. But I started with the G-Shock. As I mentioned, I've been kind of trying to simplify my digital life, go into a simpler, more basic phone. So I switched to the iPhone. Not using my Google keeping the Pixel as a spare phone, the Pixel Fold, because it's awesome. But I don't need a smart watch anymore. I just need a watch. So I started with something basic, but I was like, you know what? It does look kind of inexpensive, and it is. I mean, these are only like $60 or something, but it's a G-Shock and it's 200-meter water resistant, so it'll take a bit of a beating. But then I found one that was a little bit bigger and I think a little bit nicer. So this one was, I think, the 5600E. And then I did go with a 2100 or a B2100 that has the Bluetooth connection, so you could set it from your phone. It has no smartphone functionality, but if you didn't want to sit here and go through the buttons to set the clock or the date or change the alarm or something, and the synchronization, once a day it just pulls it from the phone, which is connected to the network and set to an atomic clock, so it's always up to date. And this one is also solar. And that one's a little nicer, and I think with the analog, it definitely looks classier. This looks like, even though it's a good, reliable, solid, cheap watch, it does look kind of inexpensive. This one at least looks a little nicer. You got a nice couple dial, you got the dial there and a little digital display for some things, and it's a little bit nicer, but the buttons are kind of small, and I wanted something just a little bit bigger on my wrist. So I went up to the outlet mall yesterday with Jimmy during our podcast, and this is one that I had been looking at. And this one is the 9300-1. Yeah, the 9300-1 uses the 3261 internals. And this is part of their Mudman Masters of G or something like that, they call it. This is the heavy duty, not their most heavy duty. Apparently, these things go up to like $6,000. I think there's a $6,100 G-Shock out there. This one was only $200, so still decent. I mean, it's not cheap, but it definitely ups the game from these. It uses the resin. I will say that the band feels more rubbery, a little less plasticky. Even though it didn't say it was different materials, I don't know. It just feels a little bit softer. It's got way more armor on it, but it's all lightweight. Like this thing doesn't, you look at this and you're like, that's a beast of a watch. It's not like that Invicta diver's watch I had, which weighed like half a pound, where you felt like you had a wrist weight on your wrist. This is actually super, super light. It doesn't weigh much at all. And I find that this is about the perfect size for my wrist. It really fits nicely and it's comfortable. The band is just right. I've got it just enough so it's not like tight and cutting off circulation, but it does move a little bit, but it's not flopping around. It really sits nicely on my wrist. I like this one a lot. So what this one has is, this one is a solar watch. I don't know how it synchronizes. It has the mud buttons, so when you look on the, well, you know what, let me take it off. Probably easier to look at it. It's got these sealed buttons. That's what the Mud series is famous for. So dirt, sand, grit, all that stuff cannot get inside there. It protects the buttons, protects the mechanism underneath. It's got extra shock resistance. It's got a compass in it as well as a thermometer. So if you wanted to go compass mode, I don't know, if you're out hiking or something, don't have your phone, don't have GPS, it calibrates the compass and then you turn it and it tells you how many degrees. And you can turn it to, let's see, north is what way? North, I believe, is that way? Something like that? I don't know. Again, I'm still learning this thing and figuring out where everything on it is. And then you got your temperature in Fahrenheit. I think I need to calibrate something. I'm not sure. I just got it. So I'm still learning the ins and outs of it. So maybe north is that way? I don't know. We'll figure that part out. But it's got all that stuff. It's got moon phase. It's got world time, so you can set it for different cities. So you can set up your primary city. And then if you go out to Vegas for the weekend, you can see up here, you can change it to where it'll show you what your current time is where you are and then what time it is home. So you don't have to keep doing the conversion. You got a stopwatch that does hundredths of a second. You got a backlight. Then you got a timer, you got alarms, and then you got your date and day of the week. And so it's just a basic, it doesn't have a terrible amount of functionality, but that's what I want. It's got basic stuff. And if I did go hunting or something and I needed to know which way was north in the woods, or something like that, and I was out of cell phone signal, I don't know how often I'll use a compass, but why not? Why not have one, right? Very light, very comfortable. And for my wrists, I'm a tall guy, I'm a big guy, but I don't have like really big, thick wrists. My fingers, my hands are decent size, but I don't have big fat hands and a fat wrist. So that's about as big of a band as I would want. You don't want to get it so long that it's sticking out the other side. But I feel like it sits nice. This thing will take a beating. The glass is a bit more recessed than it is here. If you drop it face down, it's going to land on that. A lot of people have asked over the years, these watch bands, how come they don't flip or flatten out? You can't like lay it out nice. That's for a reason. They make the bands, they built springs. Basically, look at that, how that's set up. Basically, this is like a spring. The watch doesn't lay flat. The back here, this hard back is the most sensitive part, because that's where the internals are. You can replace a crystal pretty cheap, but if you were to damage the internals, you basically need a new movement. A new core, whatever you want to call it. So it's got carbon fiber protection and stuff in there, some kind of carbon guard, they call it. But if you were to drop the watch, if it lays flat, it could smack on the back. And that metal's going to transfer that force, that impact, those G's to the internals much better than the plastic would. So what they do is they make these bands like this so that it will not sit flat on the desk like a nice dress watch. They do that. They automatically spring back. Why? So when you drop it, it springs. It hits it and protects the back, and then it bounces onto the side where all the plastic and the armor is. That's why these things take a freaking beating. And this one, the Mudmaster, takes all the stuff that this has and then adds another almost like clamshell thing. You've got protection, extra protection on the back, extra thick protective bands. There is no way for that thing to hit and compress enough to where that thing is going to get hit. And then your glass is recessed under a much deeper guard that sits over the top. And if you do bang these up, apparently you can unscrew them and you can get replacements. And sometimes people get different colors and do things with it. But this to me is, I think, awesome. There are some that are bigger. There's the new 9500 that's bigger, but not much heavier. I may pick up one of those, but those are like $350. And so I'm going to wait a little bit on that. This thing I think will tide me over for a while. I know I just bought 3 G-Shocks in the span of a week, but I've got a true beater watch. Like if I'm out working on the car or the bike where I might bang it into a piece of metal or something and scratch it, I'm going to be wearing this. This is probably going to be just my daily beater as I just that's going to be my go-to watch. And then maybe if I'm going to the office or if I was going out to dinner at a nicer place where I wanted something that was a little less utilitarian, but still G-Shock, but a little nicer, a little classier with the nice clean dial, that's where this one's going to come into play. So we got your 5600E, 9300-1, and what the hell was this one? No, 2100. This was the B2100, and this is the 93,000 or 9300, I guess, -1. I like that fact that it has the temperature gauge and the compass if you ever needed it, but it's just you could beat the shit out of this thing. Nothing's getting up in there. Dive in the pool. You could go do some light scuba diving, get caught in the rain on the motorcycle, crash the motorcycle, whatever. Not that we want to put that to the test, but this is one of those things that'll just take a beating. And these are some of the toughest watches on earth. Yes, you could buy much nicer ones. I'm actually thinking one day I might want to pick up like a Grand Seiko or something like that. Those range anywhere on the cheap end from $3,800 up to $260,000. I'd love to have a Breitling or some kind of a really nice classy watch I could leave to somebody in my will. But for an everyday beater that'll just work and it charges, it's got a solar battery. So if I were to put this in the drawer without the power mode on, without the power saver, which means between certain hours of the day when it's dark, it shuts down, shuts the screen off. And then unless it sees light or you pick it up or you hit the light button, which turns on the backlight, I would say that would be the only thing I wish on this one. On this one, you can set the backlight for 1.4 seconds or 3 seconds, or it's 1.5 or 3. And so I set it for 3 so that when the light goes on, whoops, oh, it's synchronizing to the time. I must have hit the time sync button. So it's calling out to my phone right now. It just says, okay, and it's synchronized. If you hit this button, it turns on that LED. And now that LED, you can set the duration, and I set it for 3 seconds. This one, you turn it on, but it just stays on for the 1.5 seconds. I don't think you can set that duration. I wish they had that. But it is solar. It'll last for like 10 months in a drawer if you don't put power saving on. If you leave power saving on, it can sit there for like almost 2 years. And as soon as you're out walking around in the sunlight and set it on the desk or the table in the sunlight for an hour or two, it charges the battery up and you're good for another 10 months or years or whatever it is. Basically, that solar cell might eventually wear out, but it's not going to do it with any luck within the next 15, 20 years. I will be a much older man when that battery decides that I need to replace that. And at that point, I'll probably just buy a new watch. But that's what I like about these, of the Citizen Eco Drive and things like that. Not having to wind it, because the ones you have to wind up have to be serviced every 3, 4, 5 years. They'll get out of time. Springs wear out from being coiled up and then uncoiling and coiled up and uncoiling. You have to lubricate the movements and stuff like that. So you need to go have your watches serviced if you've got like the wind-up automatics, or they stop keeping time correctly. So something like this which is tough as anything, and some of them are set from phone, others are set by radio during the night. It's always up to date, and it just works. It's a timepiece that you can beat the hell out of or go skiing, do whatever it is you're going to do. I don't go skiing. But, yeah. Anyway, that is the new one. This so far is my favorite, although I'd say this one is probably really close second because it's just a little nicer, a little more elegant, little less chunky. But, if you want something that'll go to hell and back, you probably want the Mud series or the Masters of G, any of those tougher ones. So anyway, that's the new one, 9301, big thumbs up. This is the one that you'll most often see on my wrist.